The last section in this chapter is like super easy. In fact, you already can do all of this section with just what we learned in the last section. But if you can master these patterns, it'll make your life easier in the next chapter. So I'm going to go ahead and go over the patterns so you can get some idea of what's going on. There isn't much classwork and homework for this section, just so you know. So for the first one, these are some special patterns. They have names to them, but I don't want to talk about the names until we get to the next chapter, so you can kind of get some idea of where we get the names for them from. So for right now, we're just going to say that they're a pattern. So for this pattern, if we were to do it the old-fashioned way, we would say that x plus y, because it is square, that means we have two of them. So that's times x plus y. Then you have to FOIL it out, George it out, whatever you're going to do, distribute it out. But when you do, you're going to end up with this. So it's the first one squared, then you multiply the two together and say 2 times whatever it is multiplied together, and then it's the last one squared. So if you can remember the first one squared multiplied by 2 and last one squared, then you'll have this pattern down. Because if we multiplied this out, x times x is x squared, x times y is xy, y times x is xy, so that's 2 xy's, and then y times y is y squared. So this is a pattern. Works that way every time. Same thing for this one. If there's a minus in there, the only thing that changes is the same pattern. Squared multiplied together times 2 squared is that since there's a minus there, that puts a minus there. And then this one is a little bit different. This one is when you have the same thing inside, except your signs are different. When your signs are different, you square the first one and you square the last one, and there's a minus in between. There is no middle term, though. It ends up being a binomial answer, not a trinomial answer. So for this one right here, I've got 3 examples here to show you. Remember, this is a pattern. What's in black is a pattern. It is not just a simple problem. It's a pattern. It'll work that way every time. So down here, I need to try to use the pattern. So for x plus 2 squared, that's like this one. So if it's x squared, that means down here it's going to be x squared, because it's squaring the first thing. Then I'm supposed to multiply them together and multiply it by 2. So when I multiply these two things together, I get 2x. And then times another 2 gives me a 4x. And then I have the last one squared, because that's what this was, the last one squared. So that's going to give me plus a 4. Now, if you would have gone to the trouble of multiplying out x plus 2 times x plus 2, times x plus 2, you would still end up with the x squared plus 4x plus 4. And that's fine if you do it that way. It just makes your life simpler. There's less work if you use the pattern. Just like later on, it's going to make your life simpler because you'll be able to recognize some things. So for this one, this is an example of that one. Remember, it's a pattern. So instead of me doing 3y, I look up here, my x got squared, so my 3y needs to get squared. When I multiply 3y times 3y, I'm left with 9y squared. Remember, the 3 gets multiplied twice too. Then in my pattern, it's negative 2 times those things multiplied together. So negative 2 times these things multiplied together. 5 times 3 is 15y times the negative 2 would give me a negative 30y. And then my last thing got squared. So 5 squared is 25. It's a pattern. If you don't get it, do it the old way. That's fine. Over here, if I recognize that these two are the same except for the signs in between, then I can use the pattern. The first thing squared gives me an x squared. The last thing squared gives me a 25, and there has to be a minus in between them. It's a pattern. If you can follow the pattern, grand. If you can't, do it the old way. That's fine. Practice never killed nobody. So for this section, I told you less classwork, less homework. On page 258, classwork is in the class exercises, numbers 2, 4, and 6. Just 3 problems. Homework is in the practice exercises, same page, numbers 3, 5, 7. Where was it? 15 and 17. So a lot less problems than you have been doing. So you should have plenty of time. If you can use the pattern, it'll make your life simpler. If you can't, that's okay. Do it the other way. Now, as far as your test goes, for the review, you're going to want to make sure that you look over everything that we've done so far, that you go back over your laws of exponents, that you know how to use them, that you know how to multiply and divide in scientific notation. Make sure your answer's still in scientific notation. Make sure you can add, subtract, multiply polynomials, and make sure that you know the different kinds of polynomials and you can find the degrees of polynomials. So, if I were you, what I would do for a review is I'm trying to see if there's anything that I would take out. And I think you are pretty good with all of it. So yeah, I would do 1 through 37 odd in the chapter summary and review. It's actually a really good summary and review for you. If you have a question, let me know. I'll talk to you later. Bye.